Did you know the stock market peaked on September 3rd, 1929? Just weeks later, it all came crashing down, triggering the Great Depression. This guy's worried, and apparently we should be too. According to Bloomberg's Mike McGlone, who is out here saying get ready for 10K Bitcoin. Somebody better check his meds, because everything happening right now. Max Keiser has foretold, and now he's calling for $2 million Bitcoin. A massive reset is coming. The break is over, the takeover is now, and the fourth turning is here. We're talking debt spiral, a world on the brink of war, and why stablecoins are just hospice for the dollar. Is $2 million Bitcoin in play? Well, you better strap in, because this one is not for the faint of heart. Send it!
Isn't that amazing?
It is a great
How is that amazing? They can tell you how many razors were sold at Walmart on a Thursday at 9 a.m., but they can't tell you how many trillions of dollars in the black hole of debt killing the world economy.
We're in a full-scale debt deflation.
I've actually got a black hole of debt here, Stacy. I will demonstrate right now. As you can see, these are the Mid-Eastern investors wasting their money by throwing it into the black hole of the American banking system. Oh, there's the Icelandic banking system. There's Citigroup. That's a big waste of money. Oh, there's JP Morgan. What a waste of money. Oh, you see what I'm saying? You get the point. It's a black hole of debt. Where is it going, this money?
It's just transferring the private debt to the public debt. It's transferring the debt of the wealthy financiers to the tax that are going to be paid by the poor wage earners.
The work they supposedly did to earn the bonuses has not proved to be sustainable.
I think what we see with these bailouts at the moment is more imaginary money being pumped in. And that makes the previous imaginary money seem more real by comparison, thereby making it rise in value. So again, just the more made-up stuff that you can throw at this problem, the less bad it will seem.
Is that true? Are bankers more dangerous than standing armies?
Well, we've seen what happened in September, so there's a grain of truth in there, I guess.
So why are we bailing out these bankers?
You ask a German. I have no idea why we do.
I have nothing wrong with bankers. I was a banker myself, but I'm going to tell you something. Hey, we were both bankers.
Brothers, man.
Hey,
maybe down at Harry's for a triple scotch.
You bet, you bet.
This is the economic model of the Greenspan era. It's called blowing bubbles. This is all that they did for 25 years after Reagan became president. Blowing bubbles. What do you think, Peter Schiff? Alan Greenspan arrested, drawn, quartered, tarred, feathered?
Confucian reigns in China.
Really? I like that.
Once again, conflict in the Bermuda Triangle of the global economy. Dials are spinning in opposite directions. Nobody knows exactly whether we're upside down, right side up, whether to add money, whether we're socialists, whether we're capitalists. And nobody seems quite sure.
F&A, well, let's start with that macro storm and the black hole of debt. The U.S. is in a debt spiral. We're borrowing over $1 trillion every 100 days. That's not some fringe blog saying it. That's straight from Treasury auctions. Every new bond issue looks like a yard sale nobody wants to attend. Yeah, big oof. Yields are ripping higher, the 10-year Treasury is breaking levels not seen in decades, and the so-called safest asset in the world is now the riskiest bag to hold. Add in the global picture. War's heating up. In Ukraine, the Middle East, Taiwan, and you've got a recipe for total systemic fragility. And yet, Bloomberg's Mike McGlone gets on camera to say Bitcoin is heading to 10K.
So that's one thing, is the systematic risk of Bitcoin is like nothing I've ever seen. I fully expect it to do what it always has in history, to have a normal 50%, maybe 60, maybe 70, higher or higher drawdown. And now you see an example of how extreme it is. But those two words, Bitcoin and Treasury, in the same sentence is a complete oxymoron. When I think of Treasuries,
so what happens to these tickers once Bitcoin loses a zero?
Well, exactly. It's the thing. That's what happens. They get stopped out, and then it's time to buy Bitcoin. Maybe we'll get lucky this time, but this is all predicated. Remember, this space helped get that president elected. It was a bit of a Faustian bargain, and these things typically don't work out so well. That's why I point out is also, remember who started this? Michael Saylor at Strategy. I mean, I was very close to him. I interviewed him in 2022. It was our first time that Bloomberg had an open event, and I agreed with him. That's when he jumped on board in 2020. He jumped on board with Bitcoin. Well, the main reason MicroStrategy back then jumped on Bitcoin was his software company didn't have a lot of upside potential. So that was fine. An alternative. It worked great. He doubled down. He got a 10x, and now he's doubling down. And he actually has been taunting Warren Buffett for being heavy in cash. David, it's the most significant example of lesson you learn in the trading pitch is never mess with the market gods. Thou shalt not tempt the market gods, and he tempted the market gods, and I wish them luck. But this, I think I'm going to look back in history and write in my book, this is an example of peak bubble. And here's a problem I also have with Bitcoin. There's 21 million other cryptocurrencies. People like Tom Lee have gone over to Ethereum. Like, okay, well, there's another million you can rotate at some point. Rotate it. There's unlimited supply of. And only in 2009 there was only one. Now there's 21 million or 20 million. So they're commodities and they're expensive, and people are buying them at the highs. The lesson of commodities is they go down because they went up, and they go up because it went down. So I think we're just going to head towards that going down phase, and it's going to be pretty enduring. And things like Dogecoin are going to have to drop a couple zeros, and Bitcoin might drop a zero. Now, to end all that thing, the U.S. stock market has to stay elevated. It's August. We don't have a minor correction, but for now, it's early days. That's why I think the end of this year is going to be so telling, and that's why by the end of the year, if the U.S. stock market is just up 5%, everything, the dominoes tumble. And so I think there's good indications for that. Gold's figuring it out.
McGlone thinks Bitcoin is going to collapse while gold hits all-time highs and fiat burns. That's like telling the passengers of the Titanic that the problem is the lifeboats. That's not analysis. It's fiat coup. Meanwhile, Max Keiser turning up the heat. He's not talking about Bitcoin crashing. He's talking about Bitcoin at 2 milli. And remember, this isn't some asshat from Bloomberg. Max has been on the Bitcoin bullhorn since it was under $1. He was telling you to stack sats before anyone even knew what a sat was.
The states will disintegrate because states don't have any Bitcoin, so they will disintegrate, and they'll go to war with each other. I was speaking with a gentleman last night from Pakistan, and Pakistan and India recently got into a bit of a kerfuffle, a jet fight in the air. Mm-hmm. He was saying, well, the Pakistani jets cost like 50 million, and their jets cost 250 million, and we shot down their jets, and our bombs are 50 million. And I said, let me explain to you how a Bitcoiner sees this. A Bitcoiner looks at you, two countries, going into debt to buy weapons to kill each other, which you then have to pay for by printing more money or borrowing more money. That means my Bitcoin goes higher. So, I could try to get you to buy Bitcoin and save you, but I'm conflicted, because the more you kill each other, the more my Bitcoin is worth. So, I'm conflicted. And you want me to help you, but you have to bottom out in the fiat money world. You have to bottom out on warmongering. You have to bottom out on your religious nonsense, to accept Bitcoin. If you're not going to, I don't care, because you're just going to print money to add ad nauseum to infinity. And it just means Bitcoin goes to, keeps going higher and higher. So, we'll see. The solution is here for you, but if you don't want it, I don't care.
Over the years, they laughed at him, called him crazy. Well, who's laughing now? And I can tell you, Keiser's thesis is brutally simple. The fiat system is mathematically guaranteed to fail. Every bond issuance, every war spending package, every rate cut, it all pushes us closer to reset. And when that reset hits, Bitcoin doesn't just go up. It absorbs the whole system. That's where $2 million comes from. It's 10th grade math, really. Now let's address this, stablecoin debate, which is just shadow yield curve control. Everyone loves to call Tether and USDC the bridge between the old world and the new, but here's the reality. Stablecoins are hospice care for the US dollar. They don't fix the patient, they just make the collapse more, comfortable. When countries like Argentina or Turkey rush into stablecoins, what they're really saying is, we can't trust our local money, but we're not ready to jump to Bitcoin yet. It's training wheels. But guess what? Training wheels don't win the Tour de France.
Do I still believe in Bitcoin? Yes, of course. It's just getting started. The message and the path of Bitcoin is a deep spiritual path, and it's pulling in everything that can be liquidated and put into Bitcoin is being liquidated and put into Bitcoin. So that means that it's demonetizing all fiat money, obviously, but that's not a hard thing to do because all fiat money eventually goes to zero. That's the history of fiat money. They've all gone to zero or lost 99% of their purchasing power. None has ever escaped that fate. The average lifespan of fiat money is roughly 27 years. And the US dollar will not escape that fate either. It's currently the world reserve currency. There's a lot of interesting things to talk about the US dollar and how that relates to stable coins and how that plays out globally. That's an interesting topic. But the dollar itself cannot escape losing another 90% of its purchasing power as it's already lost. And that should happen pretty quickly for the same reasons that all fiat money ends up going to zero. And that is that the countries that sponsor them engage in a debt spiral. They borrow too much. They can't pay their debt. Now, the interest on the debt for the American dollar is the single biggest item on America's budget. It's bigger than the Pentagon. It's bigger than the military, is the interest on our debt. So it's not that we can't afford to pay the debt. We can't afford to pay the interest on the debt. That's called a debt spiral. And it always ends the same way. And we're seeing, I guess, to digress a little bit, in what's called the stablecoin market is an attempt to stave off the inevitable collapse of the U.S. dollar. I think of these stablecoins and U.S. dollar stablecoins as like the hospice for the U.S. dollar. You know, it's where the U.S. dollar is going to die. It'll just prolong the agony of having an unstable, worthless fiat money. And we see already what's happening in the gold market. The gold market has woken up to this. After being kind of asleep for a while, for a few years, it's now hitting new all-time highs, over 3,000. Gold will go to $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 an ounce. Bitcoin is $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $4 million, $5 million a coin, right? That's the path that Bitcoin is on. Everything that can be liquidated and put into Bitcoin will be liquidated and put into Bitcoin, because everything goes to zero against Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is the best money that we've ever had as humans. And humans are compelled to seek the best possible money. Humans essentially have a fetish for money, and Bitcoin is perfect money.
Stablecoins only exist because of the dollar's credibility. If people knew what we knew, it'd have zero credibility, hence why it's destined to go to zero. When the dollar goes, they go with it. Bitcoin doesn't need permission. It doesn't need reserves. It doesn't need the Fed, and it doesn't need yield. It's the thing. It's self-sovereign money, period. And if you want to level up your Bitcoin journey right now, you need the right tools. We're about to bring it home today, but before we do, look at our likes.
3 or 4 times, maybe.
I gotta pump those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers in this racket.
Give us a pamp while we take a moment to recognize our sponsors powering this show over at the Bitcoin Way. If you don't hold your keys, you don't hold your Bitcoin. That's why I trust the Bitcoin Way. They'll walk you through cold storage, multi-sig, privacy, everything you need to reclaim your sovereignty. Are you sick of people peeing in your mempool? Core versus nuts got you confused? Schedule a free 30-minute consultation with the Bitcoin Way using that link in the show notes and learn how to run a node and secure your generational wealth today. And hey, once you've got your self-custody dialed in, if you ever need to tap into your Bitcoin's value without selling, boom, you're holding pristine collateral. And that's where Ledn comes in. Ledn has funded over $10 billion in Bitcoin-backed loans since 2018. No monthly payments, no penalties, just flexibility. You control your loan, you control your Bitcoin. Collateral is never lent out to generate interest, and every 6 months, proof of reserves. It's simple. If you need cash but don't want to sell your precious corn, Ledn has your back. So go to learn.ledn.io/simply, and Simply Bitcoin clients will get 25 basis points off their first loan. Let's zoom out. History runs in cycles. 80 to 100-year cycles, and we're deep in what Neil Howe would call the fourth turning. Every fourth turning brings crisis. In the 1860s, it was the Civil War. In the 1930s, it was the Great Depression and World War II. And now, in the 2020s, we're seeing it again. Financial collapse, global conflict, and political breakdown. But here's the twist. For the first time in history, humanity has a monetary escape hatch. In 1929, when the system failed, people had nowhere to go. Today, we have Bitcoin.
You mentioned one way to deal with this is obviously raising interest rates to tackle inflation, an obvious move. But what is the answer to this problem then? What can the US Treasury and the Fed do right now to deal with this looming crisis?
Well, yeah, raising rates is what Paul Volcker did in 1980. When the debt to GDP ratio that was a possibility, and it worked after a massive debt raising of interest rates into the 19%, right? But the debt to GDP ratio right now is 10 times at least higher. So that's actually not going to work. There is no solution That's why people are running into Bitcoin. That's why Bitcoin's worth over $1 trillion now, why it's going to $10 trillion now, is that people are running for the hills. They're getting out of Dodge. They're dumping their U.S. Treasury bonds. They're dumping whatever they can, and they're putting it into Bitcoin. And so Bitcoin, we're going to see Bitcoin be the major winner in this sovereign debt collapse globally. That's how you get to $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 per Bitcoin. Everybody knows it now. Paul Tudor Jones, Stan Druckenmiller, Michael Saylor over at MicroStrategy. They're all openly talking about a speculative attack against the central banks. Borrow at that cheap rate, buy Bitcoin, and let them die. That's what's going on.
And Janet Yellen, for one, expects these interest or these inflation levels, rather, to persist until mid-2022. Do you think that's an accurate forecast, or could we see these problems persist into the years after that?
You know, last year, Janet Yellen said the biggest problem was deflation. Then they said, oh, you know what? It's actually inflation. Then they said the inflation was transitory. Now they're saying the inflation is going to be around for a few years. We're at the beginning of a multi-year secular inflation that will last quite a bit of time. We're leaving a 40-year bull market in bonds. It started when Volcker finished his job back in 1980, and Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher came to office, and we've had 40 years of lower interest rates. Well, that's now finished. We're going to have now a multi-year period of rising interest rates. It's going to be worse than the 1970s. We're going to see major defaults across the corporate world. We're going to see sovereign defaults, and we're going to see more countries like El Salvador start to make Bitcoin legal tender to get out, and they're openly mocking the IMF. El Salvador is openly mocking the IMF on Twitter, saying, we're buying Bitcoin, and it's we're in a completely new era, a new world, a new global standard. As Rand Paul, a senator in America, has called on Bitcoin to be the new global monetary standard, not the dollar, not gold, Bitcoin.
Keiser's not exaggerating. The fourth turning is the handoff moment. Every old system dies, every new system rises. This time, Bitcoin is the system. So let's stack it up. McGlone says 10K Bitcoin, Keiser says 2 milli. Who's right? Look at the evidence. A debt spiral nobody can stop. Fiat currencies failing left and right. Wars that require infinite money printing. And stablecoins, shadow yield curve control, propping up a dying dollar. Do you see why all roads lead to Bitcoin? This isn't a question of if, it's a question of how fast. Bitcoin is the ark, fiat is the flood, and those who don't climb aboard are going to drown in paper promises.
For the next 500 years. Can you explain what you mean?
Sure, of course I can explain what I mean. You have a world where the train is leaving the station. You know, Bitcoin is changed everything fundamentally. And those with coin, or the coiners, versus those without coins, the no coiners, there will be a split in the world and society. And we won't be looking at the world in terms of nation states anymore. I think the nation state becomes passé or disintermediated. Central banks are obliterated. And you have the global tribe of millions of Bitcoiners who have all the money. And then there'll be everybody else who doesn't have it. They'll just be living in a different reality. And that template will be set for 500 years because Bitcoin is perfect money, and it's taken 1 million years to get to Bitcoin. We finally achieved it. And now it's a day of reckoning. If you have no coin, you'll probably be living in the equivalent of hell. If you have coin, you will be living in heaven.
That's why we say it every single day. Take custody, stack sats, and prepare, because when the fourth turning fully hits, you'll be glad you opted out. Son! And don't miss Mining Disrupt 2025, the biggest Bitcoin mining expo on earth. November 11th through the 13th in Dallas, Texas. Meet the legends building the hash power revolution, sovereign mining, AI, and Bitcoin integration. This is where the next wave of Bitcoin history is being written. So grab your tickets today, and don't forget to use promo code SimplyBitcoin for 20% off. Hey, hope you guys enjoyed this one. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and give us a bam by sharing the Sound Money Gospel. And set those notifications for the best in Bitcoin news delivered to you daily. I love you guys. Catch you next time. Peace.
If you prefer to go down with the ship, you.